Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Cookbook. I'm your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I'm super excited about my guest today. Laura Livingston is, she's probably one of the, I love her. She's just an awesome person. We met this year. We've spoken a few times, and she's just very special. And I think that you'll glean that from our conversation. So I'm going to read her bio and bring her on. And Skylar's going to have something to say. Okay. As a mindset and business coach, Laura helps visionary entrepreneurs and small business owners who love what they do to create more fulfillment, impact, and profit. So you worried about the 50-year-olds coming in, and I got the dogs here, so we're good. Most people come to Laura in the middle of a business transition, a pivot, or a deep desire to take their business to the next level. Laura's magic is in helping her clients to think differently and think bigger. Whether it's navigating a pivot or making a pivotal decision, Laura helps you to make the right decisions for you and your business that serve your unique style, talents, and interests so that your work is not only impactful and profitable, but sustainable and fulfilling as well. Laura has worked with people going through change or creating it for her entire career. It's not just what she does, it's who she is. She's a free spirit and has a deep call for adventure that's led her to move many times and travel the world. Her two true loves are international travel and scuba diving. She now lives in Roatan, Honduras, which we are going to get there one of these days, a diver's paradise, with her cat George, who is 17 and the real boss. As a psych major for life, she has been trained in coaching, crisis counseling, hypnotherapy, Reiki, yoga, meditation, EFT, and she's an avid reader of all things personal growth and development. Ask her for a book recommendation. I have a book recommendation for you. She spent 18 years in change management and organization development, consulting, and HR before starting her business in 2017. It's a lot. Okay, so without further ado, let's meet Laura.
Wow.
Hi, Iris. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being on. You've done so much. And I have a book and I put it, you know Carrie Johansson, right?
I don't know Carrie Johansson. You need to know. I should know Carrie Johansson. Okay.
You should totally know her. Because she wrote this book. And it's like my first time plugging this, but it's called Self-Help. But it is self-help on the go. And it's not a self-help book. It's not like where you have to read every single page to get the help that you need. It's whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, there's a page about it. So it's like, feel better, calm your nerves. So you go to page 3 and calm your nerves. And then you read it. And so whatever you're going through, there's a chapter in here that applies to it. So you don't have to sit and read the whole thing. You can just pick it up whenever you're having a day. Like I had a day yesterday and I picked this up. And it helps because it makes you, it kind of like makes you realize that A, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And B, there's a way through it. And I just did a podcast with Catherine Morales last week. And our thing was you have to go through it to go to it. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what that kind of helps with. Yeah. But enough about that. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about you and
the recommendations.
Yeah.
We can talk about books all day.
But I want to talk about you. You're my guest and you're awesome. So, and that hammock is making me jealous. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the hammock is, I moved into this house about a year ago and before I put anything on the walls, I was like, I need some sort of background, until I hang the art and stuff. And so I just flipped my desk around what I thought would be backwards. And everybody loved the hammock, so I'm keeping it. I live on an island. It makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it makes everybody looking there go, yeah. So how do you keep people from coming to visit you? Because I mean, when they see that hammock and they're like, when can I book a flight? So
we do have a busy guest room. We take reservations. We plan in advance, but yeah, no, it's a joy. It's a real joy to be able to have people come down and
awesome. Yeah. So, you talk about pivoting and I don't know if we talked about this, but I'll tell you the story and then I want to hear how you help people. But we have a local business and I love talking about them because the pivot that they made during COVID was incredible because a lot of restaurants around here closed. And Mary and Teresa and, oh my God, she's going to kill me. Cheyenne. She'll be like, I heard it. You forgot my name. Own a restaurant called Bistro 501. And they were thinking of doing a market beforehand, but they didn't, move forward with it or anything. And when COVID hit, they were like, we have all of this produce. We get all of these things. So why don't we, because the restaurant's not open, and they were very cognizant of the pandemic, of, everything that was going on. And they were like, you know what? Let's make a market. So what they did was, but like a market on wheels. So any of the produce that they got, any of the meat that they got, like anything, they created a delivery system. And it was amazing. So you got like farm to table, produce and cheese and all of this. And then with every order, they would put in a roll of toilet paper and a little bottle of hand sanitizer. And it kept going. And then they eventually opened up like one night a week. Like they were very careful about what they did. But the pivot that they made kept them going, right? And now they have like the market. They like have a market right, next door to the restaurant. And they blew it away. So I couldn't believe it. I was just like, it was so amazing. So to me, that's an amazing story about a pivot. So, as a coach, like, talk to me about pivots that you've seen or that you've aided and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I love that story because I think it's just such a great example of, everybody says making lemonade out of lemons, but like really and truly, like that's life. And I think that's business is like, okay, what are we going to do with that? As opposed to, are we going to sit here and complain about it? Are we going to fight against it? Are we going to just shut down and put our tails between our legs? And there's no judgment around that either. I think sometimes and I've actually helped clients close businesses because they just didn't want to run them anymore. And that's right. Great. But I think, it's just a great example of, how can I figure this out? There has to be something I can do here. And that approach is what enables us, like from a mindset perspective, that's what enables us to find the magical moments of like the market in their example. But I think I love pivots. I mean, I started my career doing organization development and change management, which is essentially looking at human behavior and how groups interact and operate, and then therefore how organizations interact and operate, and then what happens from a human, like individual perspective around change, right? All the way up to societal level change, which we've seen a lot in the States, really in the world in the last 10 years. That I'm like, oh, this is what we talked about in grad school 20. This is the swinging of the pendulum. Like this is actually just normal human behavior. That's a side note, but so I think. And then I went into the working world and mostly did change management type consulting. And so change has just always been the lens that I've seen business through. Most of the time, most of my jobs were around helping an organization make a change. And I sort of lived entrepreneurially since I started. I've moved around since I, went into school, after school, moved around a ton. Now I'm living in Roatan, but like in some ways, everybody that knows me is like, yeah, there she goes again, like just picking up and moving. I do that a lot. That's just, I like to create change. I feel that life is an adventure. I love to travel, and that's just what works for me in my life. It's not for everybody, but I think so. Thinking about, so I can geek out all day long about change and change in general. And I think what I really love, like I love a good pivot, but I love a good pivot where the end result, because it's, it's the kind of thing that like, it sort of is how do I want to say this? Like, it's so easy to like tell the end of the story, right? This was a beautiful story because of how it ended, right? What if it had ended differently? Right. And I think my job as a coach in supporting small business owners going through pivots, and that's not the only thing I do, but it happens a lot. It just also happens a lot. It's really normal, is to really hold tight to what the vision is for the human going through the change in their business. And that's why I don't have an opinion about what the end result is and what success is. I help them to define what success is for them in the future, whether they're just, hey, and this is for any client really, but in pivots, it's really essential because I bet you those restaurant owners took a moment and said, is this just time? Is it just time to stop? No, we're not. We're just going to keep this going. So then they move forward, right? But I think some people did close their businesses during COVID, and that was probably also the right decision for them. And so just like I always equate business to marriage and dating. Like, just like the right decision for some people is to get divorced and the right decision for some people is to stay married. And so I don't think the end result, I don't have a prescribed end result that I'm looking for. It's like what makes the most sense for the person and the business together as we, move into the future. And so I love this story because it's a great, success story. And I love them. Like I said earlier, I love the mindset behind that, which had to have been something like, okay, how can we figure this out? Instead of, oh crap, we're done for, And I know the success of business is often
knew them
down to that.
There'd be no way that they would be like, because they're probably three of the most strong dynamic women that, I know locally. And I know them, really well. Mary's the mom, and she's so funny. We bought in 22, we bought a 75-inch TV to put over the fireplace, and we were at dinner, and they treat us like family. And so she comes over and she sits down and she's like, "What's new?" And I was like, "Oh, I just got my 75-inch TV," and I was like all excited. And she goes, "Great, I'll be over for the Super Bowl." And we're like, "Okay, cool." And so Heather was like, "She really coming?" And I said, "Probably." She said she is. So then like a week before, she's like, "What do you want me to bring?" And I was like, she's coming.
This is real.
And she came over and we had like such a good time. But, when you have, gosh, I think I just said, gosh. Huh. Okay. Michelle, drink when I say gosh instead of the other thing. I have a friend who every time I drop the F-bomb will like take a sip of wine. But I just said like, gosh, I think we're doing, I have a band and one of the songs is like a Buddy Holly song and he says golly gee in it. And I think it's like stuck in my head. But I digress. I think that and especially women, because we're essentially raised to deal with, that's enough, right? Like to accept that's enough. And when you have strong women like you and I and Mary and like probably a slew of women that we know that are like, nah, that's not enough. We need, more. Not that we need more, but we want to grow and we're not afraid of growing. So we're not going to shrink when those opportunities come along. And I think that that's what happened with them was rather than seeing it, and I said this in the podcast too, rather than seeing obstacles as these, stopping stones, use them as stepping stones. Yeah. I like that. I didn't say that before. I like that. Instead of stopping stones, they're stepping stones.
That's a quote.
But really. But I mean, it's like, we can see the wall in front of us and it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But there's always a way over it. And, not everybody sees it. Not everybody has the vision, but they had the vision and they saw the way to get over it. So it was never I'm speaking for them, but I know that it was never an option for them to be like, yeah, we're closing.
Well, I think that's also kind of, back to like very basic business practices, but also the mindset behind it of what's your vision? And I think sometimes business is just committing and recommitting over and over and over again to that vision, and allowing that vision to adjust and tweak over time is actually sort of what creates sort of the essence of that original. Sometimes that vision looks exactly the same for some businesses and some people and some people's lives. It's always sort of generally the same, but sometimes it sort of tweaks and evolves, and it's like the essence of that is still the same, but maybe now that we're 5 years down the line, it looks different. Maybe now we have a market and that was never the plan, or that was never even the vision. And the essence of the vision is still getting accomplished with this new business model. And I think, too, like, it's so easy to see in the moment the challenge, but so oftentimes it's those abilities to see the resilience in yourself and in your business to take a shift, big or small, that gives you that growth. That once COVID shifted again to, okay, we're back in restaurants, et cetera, they had another pivotal decision of, well, are we just going to go back to the restaurant, right? Which a lot of people did. They went back to their original models. And some people said, actually, this is more expansive for us now, and we're going to just run both. And this is not. And so I think it's just I think so much of our work, when we're doing work that we love, so much of it comes sort of from us and through us, if you will. And I love helping people sort of just stay with that while also, doing the business side of things, like making money and making strategy decisions and things like that. But I think the other element that we always must pay attention to, and COVID was an obvious one. I mean, it was an obvious slam, but I think we always have to pay attention to sort of the environment as it's shifting and growing, but also how we are shifting and growing in our relationship with the environment over time. Yes. And so often a lot of the pivots that I end up supporting people through are the less obvious ones and more the ones that come through you around, okay, I've been doing this for 5 years and there's something, I still love my work, but there's something else I want to do too, whether that's just write a book on the side, right? Or add a slightly different, and sometimes it's like the slightly different offer, or sometimes we just don't know what it is. But I think when you do work you love, you notice when you're not loving it quite as much. Like, and it can be a 2% change, but you feel it because you know what it feels like to be really sort of in your zone of genius, to use Gay Hendricks's term. And so I think sometimes it's a really obvious pivot that you're forced to deal with because it comes to you, right? Like you're just kind of, it's happening to you, for lack of a better word. And then sometimes it's something that really kind of comes through you as you grow and evolve, as your business grows and evolves. And you're like, I kind of fell into this offer that I've got going on over here. And I got to really be honest, like that was fine for a while, but that's not my zone of genius. Like I'm good at it, but that's not what I love to do. And do I have the courage to go back to basics, go back to that initial vision and what I still want to do, what still lights me up, and to put that back together? And sometimes it's just about retiring an offer. I mean, it can be that simple. But we don't always know what the action is to take. And we certainly don't always know what the final answer is, right? Like the end result of that beautiful story you told, right? The happy ending. And I think it's that messy moment of like, okay, yeah, whether I know exactly what it is or not, something's got to change. And I think that's where I get really excited to work with people. And that's where I feel that my work is in that, great, what does need to change? Because also sometimes things don't need to change. Sometimes it's just your mind, right? Sometimes you just need a minute to look at it differently. And so I love the mystery and the detective work of looking at the business from a practical business standpoint and looking at the human from a human standpoint and seeing kind of like, where are the places where things are feeling good and where are the places where we have opportunities to, just make it better or to let go of something.
Yeah. And it's funny because I went through my own weird pivot this year when I, did the offer for the, Is Your Website Effective thing. And we did the workshop, which I'd never done before. Yeah. And it went well, but I realized I gave the cow away with the milk. And which was okay, because again, I don't believe in mistakes. If you learn, right, they're lessons. So now I know what needs to be done to fix that. But then I also realized that, I've been a guest on, I think I'm going on like 15 podcasts now. And it's, more people are inviting me. I've been invited to speak to these different online groups. So I have like the National Institute of Social Media that I'm going to be talking about accessibility, which has become like my new love. It's like things need to be accessible. Like, why wouldn't you want your website, your building, your anything to not be accessible to everybody? So
I love that.
A talk on that. Sorry, 2 hummingbirds just, I love them over here. But, people who aren't watching and are listening are like, what? It's my ADD people. You should be used to this by now. But I think that, I enjoy speaking. And I never would have, I used to get so nervous. I can sing in front of 5,000 people and not even think twice about it. But if I have to talk to a room of like 20 people, I want to throw up. Yeah. And, now I've got, with this has really helped a lot. Excuse me. But when I speak and I'm imparting my wisdom on people, and that's not said with hubris. I'm old. I've lived a lot. I've learned a lot. Right. So, but when I see that they're absorbing what I'm saying, oh my God, that's like, it's almost as good as singing in front of all those people, right? It's like the same kind of feeling. But I still love what I do. So it's like, instead of, either or, for me, it's and. Absolutely. Like, I'm going to do this and it was a pretty eye-opening moment when I realized that, when they first asked me to talk, I was like, you want me to talk to these people? And she's like, you have like no idea, what you possess. And I went, no. So she goes, we're going to have another conversation. So, excuse me, I had another conversation with them and we started talking and she asked me all these questions and I knew all the answers. And I was like, yeah, I really do know my shit, So not that I didn't think I did, but because I can help my clients, obviously I wouldn't be doing what I do if I, because for me, I believe, it's supposed to be about being of service to your clients. But to realize that, you have that breadth and depth to be able to also, disseminate the information in a different way is like, it was like a, moment. And I was so crazy excited. And I said to my wife, I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to do, public speaking. And she was like, what? I said, yeah. So I was like, all excited. And she goes, okay, breathe. She goes, where? I said, right now online. But I mean, who knows? And she said, okay, because she's like, I said, 20 years. She's the most amazing human I know. I support everything she does. She supports everything I do. We may not agree on everything, but if it's a passion of ours, go for it. And, having that little seal of approval was like, oh, okay. And I felt like, the puppy, like, okay, we're going to do this. And And so I'm really excited about that. And I think that 2024 is going to hold a lot more, of that for me too. So I'm very excited about that. But so what were you doing before this? Like, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur? Like, were you working in corporate and you were like, I want to do this now? Or had you always been doing?
I would love to tell you that I planned this out in advance and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I left corporate, with a side gig of a small business. And as I grew it, then I left my corporate job, and I can't tell you that. I do not recommend my path, but my path is something that a lot of people I think have done, and it works too. But no, I really, for the last 5 years of my corporate career, I knew. And in fact, I kind of kept making yearly deals with myself. This is the last job that I'm going to take. Because by the last 5 or 6 years of my career, I was a freelancer. And so I would take on a change project where I would work for like anywhere from a year to a year and a half somewhere. And then I would generally go traveling for a little while, come back, find another gig. And that was just sort of how I really sustained the end of my career, because I was burning out. I was really burning out.
Wow.
Loved the work itself, but not the environment and the pressure and the hours and all that stuff. And so that was sort of what I was doing. And I kind of annually would be like, okay, this will be the last one. And then while I'm doing this last one, I'm going to figure out what I wanted to do. And single woman, by the time I ended my career, I was living in San Francisco, which is one of, if not the most expensive, depending on the day, city in the country. And so I was really tied to how am I going to support myself while I also find a way to do work that I love, because I had just really, frankly, fallen out of love with what I was doing. And so I spent many years pursuing several different things that I thought might be a good choice for me. And as I pursued them kind of on the side, on weekends and evenings, and nothing quite, I still didn't quite get there. And my final project was about a year and a half or 2 years when I was living in San Francisco. And that story in itself is an interesting one. But essentially, my contract ended rather abruptly, like as planned, it ended. But there was talk of me coming in, very serious talk. I was interviewing for the job that I already had. They were going to make my role not a freelance role, but a full-time position. And they ultimately decided, in part because of my suggestions and my consultation, that they weren't ready to take on that role. And they weren't, but I was going to take it because I needed a job. And so essentially I lost my job, even though my contract just ended as planned. But I really did some soul searching. I took some time off after that, forced time off after that, and said, I'm not going to look for another job yet. I'm going to sit with myself for a minute, because I was really burned out. And I ultimately just decided this isn't it. I still don't know what is it for me. But I can't do this again. And so I got some side gigs to pay the bills. Luckily, I had a good chunk of money in savings as well. And I really started coaching with some money to help me figure out what I wanted to do. I mean, that's the short, long version. And I started in 2017. I actually started out, I went to school and got a hypnotherapy degree and, or certification, I should say, and started that way. I really wanted to help people change, but I wanted to get out of business talk. I was done with the corporate speak. I was tired of business, which is hilarious because I'm a business coach now, but I swung the pendulum the other way and went all into mindset, the subconscious mind, the spirituality of how we are in our lives. And, and I was really searching too. I was in a phase of just searching, right? In that moment in my business. And so, or of my life. And so, I really loved helping people just think through things differently. And I realized very quickly, really in that first year, probably in the first 6 months, I started serving only entrepreneurs, and really loved the how do we and working with people who already loved what they do. And I was so just committed to, I don't care what it is I'm doing, I will find a way to make money doing it and to support myself doing it. It was a very like survival instinct. Like I wasn't looking to thrive in that moment. I just needed to not be burnt out. I was like, low standards. I don't want to be burnt out, and I want to do work that feels important and meaningful to me. Life is too short.
That's not a low standard.
No, but I think I started with I agree. I don't think it's a low standard, but I very quickly saw myself realizing, oh, I can look at this, because I used to have a belief that I could either make money and support myself, or I could do work that I loved. I saw those as two completely different things. Okay. And so what I did with this work is I really had to put my money where my mouth was and bring the two together. And ultimately, very quickly, I realized, okay, I can actually make money doing something that's important, in the world, and other people do this too. And so it just sort of evolved. And very quickly, people started asking me to help them with their business. And I realized, like, it's time to put the two together. And so really for me, wondering, can I make money, good money, doing work I love? That was the question I posed to myself when I started. And now I call myself a business coach, but I call myself a success coach and a fulfillment coach, because I really feel those two are really important to go together. Like, how can we create success, your version of it, while doing work you love, and having that all sort of align, not sort of, but having that all align. Mm-hmm. And the other big learning for me in this journey has been around the business side and the personal side, because I started my career, I was a psych major. I thought I wanted to be a therapist. I actually went into that direction before I went to graduate school. And so that piece has always been there for me. Like I said, in the bio, like I'm always reading some sort of personal help, self-help, personal development book, or taking a class, or et cetera. And then my career, while focused, like in the context of humans, I was still more business. It was still more business and change strategy and things like that. And I just wanted to get back to the people. I wanted to get back to the mindset and the psychology of it all. And so for me, that's the blend now of my work, is how do you blend the personal and the business? How do you can't take the human you can't take the business owner out of the human. So no. I coach the business owner in the context of their business. And that just really feels now in hindsight kind of like it's my greatest hits. I'm stealing that from a friend of mine who said, like, it's sort of like, oh, now all the things that I've done kind of make sense in this job that I've created for myself.
Do you do human design?
Not in my work, but I'm really familiar with it. I use it for myself. And if my clients know what their design is, I'll absolutely take that information, because that's essentially what I do, right? Like it's helping them customize their business and their business changes to them and to their style, and keeping that, whether it's human design or Myers-Briggs or people who are multi-passionate or understanding their ADHD, or they have, a part-time schedule because they have kids, whatever that is. It's like making sure that we're covering that element of it so that you are able to put your genius out there and enjoy that.
So it was weird. Last year I was in Enneagram 8 and now I'm a 7. How the hell does that happen?
I don't know.
It was like, what? Unless the first test I took wasn't
maybe
accurate.
I do think, and I think with Enneagram,
that was like that. That's a bit of a jump.
I think with Enneagram, some of those, there's like I think with human design, you just are who you are. But I think Myers-Briggs is a good example, and
this
Enneagram is a good, and but I think some of them, you kind of are who you are, but as you grow, you take on more traits of other ones. And even with Enneagram also, like, I think the ones that you take traits on are the ones next to you. So if you were did you say 7 to 8?
I was an 8 to a 7.
8 to 7. So that makes sense because they're right next to each other. There's something there that's part of, I'm not an Enneagram specialist, but there's something in that I remember. They're interesting.
Because, when I became an entrepreneur, it wasn't by choice. I lost my job. And it was, do I collect unemployment or do I do something? So I, started my business, but, there are a lot of people out there that maybe they're in corporate and they're going, what should I be doing? Or they just lost their job. So what advice would you have for somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I will say, I didn't say this in my answer to your question, but I had thought about being my own boss for many, 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 many years. And I just always didn't go for it because I felt like I didn't know how. I didn't know how to do sales. That was the reason that I always sort of held back on it. And so it has been and was in my mind for many, many years of like, well, if I could figure out how to do that, that's a good suitable, sort of situation for me. But I guess my first piece of advice is entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And I think it's really easy to paint a picture of, we're all sold this like time freedom, money freedom thing. And while I actually believe you can I have way more time for my life and money for my life as well. There's a startup phase to this and you have to. And so I say it's not for everyone because I think you can do work you love without being an entrepreneur. Right. And I think if what you're looking for is to do work you love, follow the fulfillment. That's what I always say. Follow your fulfillment and then let the details sort of become clear as you follow that. Because if I'm meant to be a doctor, like I need to be a doctor. I need to work in a hospital or I need to work in a different environment. And that doesn't mean, maybe this was a bad example because I think some doctors are entrepreneurs, but I think I don't think entrepreneurship is the solution to all problems or to all desires. And so I think if you're on a journey of wanting to do work you love, that's the journey to be on. And then allowing the answer or the structure of what environment you operate in to fit you. And then if you do become an entrepreneur, that's how I coach my clients too. Like, how do we keep evolving and shifting what makes sense for you to fit you? Right. But I also think the other advice I would offer is, I think it's if you're feeling called to do something to start a business, I can pretty much guarantee you two things, even though I think everybody has their own experience, but I can pretty much guarantee these two things. Number one, it's going to be absolutely more amazing and more fun and more expansive and more inspiring than you think it's going to. Even if you think it's going to be all of those things, I think it's going to be even better because I set out to do work I love. Like that was the only focal point that I had when I had no earthly idea what I wanted to do. And I thought that's what I wanted and it is what I wanted. And it is, but it's been so much more beautiful than I ever could have imagined. I am a 10 times a better person and a happier creature as a result of going on this journey. And the second thing is going to be 10 times harder than you think. And, and I say that mainly from a mindset perspective, because I think there's some business basics we all have to learn in the startup phase. But I think once you get some of the basic things underway in the first couple of years or however long, 10 years, whatever your business is, I think it's a personal growth journey, and especially if you're doing work you love, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I think the hard personal journey for me has also made it that much more beautiful. So to me, those two things go together. But it's probably just what you expect, and it's probably also way more of everything you expect too.
And it's funny, I say, if you ever want to really get to know yourself, become an entrepreneur.
Totally.
Because you'll know your, limits and how you can, push through those. But I think that, it's like, there was that saying, I say this all the time, people were like, oh, I'd rather work 100 hours for myself than 40 hours for somebody else. Right. I didn't work 100 hours. I'm sorry. I mean, I didn't do
this. That's not a requirement. It's not a requirement. It's up to you.
Well, so I was at a Dames event up in Chicago. And Megan was in for it. And so it was like a whole bunch of us and we're all, kind of hanging out. And there were these two business owners who were amazing. But she's like, oh yeah, I pushed like 90 hours this week. And Megan and I are looking at each other like, that's not a good thing. That's not a good, you don't want to work 90 hours. Like, that's insane. But I get that in the beginning, when you're first starting, if you don't have a nest egg that you're coming from, right? If you don't have that cushion or that net, I think that you do work 90 hours a week, and you do work with anybody that comes along, because you do need that business. I mean, I look at some of the people that I worked with when I first started, and there's no way in hell I would work with them now.
You learn too, right?
Yeah. So you learn that. So for me, it's like, and my wife just like scoffs at this, and I'm like, you're in corporate and this doesn't resonate with you, but I will not work with somebody if our values don't align. Yeah. I will not do it.
And we didn't have that freedom necessarily in corporate. I mean, I got to pick my project, but that's just because I said yes to the job, and that was different.
You get to choose who was on your team.
No, and I think, I also think though, back to the 90-hour work week, like I do see people doing it across the board. Like I do see people, especially in the startup phase, and I don't tend to work with startup. I tend to work with people who already have just at least the foundation built. But I think, so I do think startup is different than ongoing. But I think I've seen it done every which way. I've seen it done part-time from the beginning. I've seen it all. And so I think you really can create whatever it is that you want or need. But I also think like the most beautiful thing for me is I can work more hours if I want to. It's not just about I get to choose because I'm the boss, which is great, but it's also about what those hours mean to me and how they feel. Because when I was like, again, and I don't want to diss my corporate career because I actually really, really enjoyed it and I'm very grateful for it. But I think when I was in moments of overwork and doing work that I wasn't loving, I was doing work. I'm going to go back to Gay Hendricks, like zone of excellence or like whatever is below that. Like I was good or great at what I was doing, but it didn't mean that it was like the thing I'm the best at, which also meant that it wasn't the thing that brought me the most joy. And anything below your zone of genius at some level, and for sure the stuff you're not good at, that drains you. And a 40-hour work week in corporate, which I typically worked a lot more than that, but a 40-hour work week in corporate for me today would be infinitely more draining than a 60-hour work week now in this business. And I work part-time. I work like 25, 30 hours a week. But it's not apples to oranges, because the energy drain or the energy feed is drastically different. And so really an hour is not an hour anymore. It's just what is the work that I need or want to get done today. And so I find I really was struggling with fatigue and all kinds of things in my last career. And all I did was change my work. Like I didn't change my diet. I didn't change anything else. And I have a lot more energy than I ever did. And I just kind of thought I was sort of a tired person. I just thought I didn't have the energy other people did. But I was just draining it all day, every day, doing something that just was not sustainable for me. And so I do think, and that's why fulfillment is so front and center for me and my work, but then also in my work with my clients, is because when you can, not perfectly, right? Like there's always going to be something you don't want to do that you need to do. Like it's not about that. But when you can just keep dialing up the fulfillment and the time that you spend in your zone of genius, not only are you enjoying yourself, but like you were talking about when you were speaking and when you're in your band, like part of fulfillment is doing the work that you love, but part of fulfillment is that feedback loop of people receiving your work and you seeing the impact and the meaning. And that's what creates the beautiful give and take. And that's what it's really all about. And so I could serve more clients.
It's that energy exchange, right? I mean, that's what
for me, serving clients now one-on-one, I could do that way more hours a day than I could being in a meeting in my corporate job, because it's just a completely different amount of energy. So I do think that's the other piece. And for me, when I started, I did work a lot of hours that first year, and I had the best time. Yes, there was frustration. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff I had to figure out and didn't know how to do, but I was still like, I still pick this any day of the week. This problem is a problem I choose any day over my former career. And so I think that's also what helps, just back to that conversation from the ladies at the restaurant, like that recommits you to your vision, right? Like when you're doing what you love, then I don't care. Like I used to have a no work on weekends policy. Now I might take Monday and Tuesday off because I can, and then I don't mind. Then it's not even a trade-off. It's just like, sure, I love doing what I did on Monday. You're switching. And I love doing what I do on Saturday. Like it's fine. Exactly. And so just that trade-off, that opportunity to just see, like you can just find your own way, but also you can that when you enjoy something, work becomes a different word. You know, I said that when I started my business, like, I want to call this something other than work. And I stopped saying I have to work today or I got to go to work at whatever time. And I would say, I'm going to work or I get to work because I love my job. I don't have to. I just get to. And there's a huge word.
I hate not, hang on, I would look at who it is, but they said, you know, if you love your work, you'll never work a day in your life. And I saw the thing Ziegler, I can't remember your work. You know, I hate doing that. You'll never work a day in your life. I love Google. Who said it? Doesn't say who. Oh, here it is. Mark Anthony. Is it the Mark Anthony? I don't know. Okay. Well, listeners, if you know who this Mark Anthony is, please let us know in the comments because I have like no idea.
It's true, though. It's really true. And I really think when work is fun, when work is meaningful, that is a gift that you give yourself because we spend time there. My listeners have heard this like a million times because this is like my favorite story, but this was my aha moment. So like 3 years ago, I always give at Christmas time, I always give my local and soon to be now my national clients, I'm going to be sending them stuff, but I always bring like some kind of a basket or something to my local clients for Christmas or for the holidays. And I walked into one client's and I was handing him his gift and he said, wait a second, I have something for you. And I went, you don't need to get me anything. That's not, how this works. And he said, no. And he comes out with this like giant freaking basket. And I'm like, what? No, you don't need to do that. And he said, I want you to understand that what you do isn't lost on me. Yeah. And I said, what do you mean? Because for me, I always want to help businesses grow. That's my goal at the end of the day, right? He said, your efforts, it's not lost on me that your efforts help put food on my guys' tables. Yeah. And again, that did two things. It made me go, wow, that's really, wow. And then it was like, wow, oh my God, now I'm responsible for like feeding people because I never like looked at it like that. So it went like through this thing. But the really cool thing was it made me look at marketing differently. It made me look at my role as their marketer differently because now it's not like, yeah, I'm helping you grow your business. Now it's like, well, shit, I'm feeding people. So I can't, not that I would ever mess up anyway, but it's like, it just like for the first, I think like 3 months, I was under so much pressure. I was like, okay, like I have to make sure that everything is perfect and, all of that. And I realized after I took all that pressure off myself that, this is what I've been doing all along. That's why he gave me the damn basket, you dummy. It's like, this is what you do. Yeah. Already did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was one of those moments of not realizing prior to that the impact that my work had. Yes. And what that did was, I think for me, it leveled me up internally.
Yeah.
And I remember I got home and it was so funny. Like Heather probably some days is like, what is wrong? You know, like you married this. So, but, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm putting food on his guy's table. And she's like, yeah, like nothing. She's an engineer. Nothing phases her, And I sat there and I was like, it's a big responsibility. And to all the marketers out there, and I say this all the time, what we do matters. What we do has a direct effect on our clients' businesses. So if you're going to half-ass it, get out of the profession. Don't do it. I work with all contractors, and everybody I work with is the best of the best. And, you know that. I won't work with anybody that I wouldn't use. And now I won't work with anybody that's like not at the, even a higher echelon than that, because in order for me to elevate my business, I have to elevate my product, and I have. But when I think about the impact, there are some nights I remember, oh gosh, this was like, I said gosh again, good Lord. This was like,
I love a good gosh.
I almost want to say just to say it because I keep saying gosh, but I think it was about a month ago. I couldn't sleep. I was up. It was like 3:00. I woke up at 3:00 in the morning. And every time I wake up, it's 3:00 in the morning. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like 3:15, 2:45, but it's always around like 3 a.m. And I was working with a client that I knew it was time to part ways. Like I just, I knew, and he knew as well, because we had a conversation, but I didn't know how to tell him because we were still serving him. And what we were doing was helping him. He didn't see it, but it was helping him. They weren't utilizing our tools the proper way because, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink.
Right.
And I was like, I cannot do my best for this client.
Yeah.
And if I can't do my best for this client, then, it's time. So, she woke up and her alarm goes off at 5:17 because she can't set it for 5:30. It has to be 5:17 or 6:07, whatever. And so her alarm went off and I laid there until she woke up. And I was like, looking at her and just, what are you looking at? And I said, I kind of have a little bit of a dilemma. And she's like, oh my God, I'm like, not even awake right now. I said, I know, but I'm having this dilemma because, I know I need to release this client because I can't do my best for him anymore. And so she's like, well, just tell him. And I'm like, it is not that easy. Everything is so engineer, right? It's like, just, and so we were supposed to have a client with both of our teams. And then he sent an email and said, Iris and I are going to meet alone. And I was like, good, because, we both kind of came to the decision at the same time that it was time to do different things. Mm-hmm. He didn't have anything bad to say about me. I had nothing bad to say about him. It was time. And it was like the first time that, I let a client go, a client let me go, that there wasn't any, oh my God, what did I do? Like, none of the beating yourself up, right?
Yeah.
It was such a reciprocal knowing.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most amazing feelings I've had, which is crazy, right? It's releasing a client, but
right.
It was just like, it didn't fit and I couldn't serve them to the fullest. And it goes back to, what our efforts do.
Yeah.
And if our hearts aren't in it all the way, then we're not really putting all of our effort in. I don't think so. So that was a huge lesson. And I think that, we're all works in progress, and we're growing and we're learning every day. If we're not, there's something wrong, right? If we stop learning, or when we stop learning is, when I think we should just probably not do what we're doing anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that this example that you're giving is a great example of lots of things. I think what you did was, you probably were a better fit, service and client in the beginning. And
yes,
what happened was, over time, it stopped being as good of a fit. And that's normal, and that's natural. And that just means you've both grown and evolved in some way, shape, or form. At least one of you has, hopefully. And I think, just like friends or dating relationships, like some people are meant to stay with you, quote unquote, long term. And some people are just meant to be like a great friend for that period of your life, or a great client for that period of your business. And for them, that you were offered a great service for that period in their business. And none of that is wrong. That's actually exactly what we're all here to do. But it doesn't mean that we're also then here to like get married to each other. I always love a good dating reference. Like, I can't stop with that. Like, right? You didn't need to marry him. You just needed to see each other for a little while, right? And that served everybody. And so you're actually continuing to serve him by letting him go, and vice versa. You were actually serving each other's business. It's kind of beautiful, right? Like, you served each other's businesses, and then you served each other's businesses by parting ways. And that's how I see it. It's really, business is still just relationships. And I think that's also, as you said, like, that just means you're growing, and that probably also means he's growing too. And to me, that's a successful client relationship. Knowing when to start doing stuff together that makes sense, and then knowing when to stop. And the stop is, for some clients, it's a much longer term relationship, and for others, it's short term, and that's all correct, and back to, like, it's also what makes this hard, because it is personal. You do develop relationships with people, and you want to help them. And if you feel like you can't help them at the greatest level of your potential because it's not a fit anymore, it also kind of just sucks. Like, it can be, there's a grief process to that, short, long, or whatever. And I think, I just think what you just described is a very, like, normal human experience in business that nobody's talking about, but this is what it's really like.
Yeah. And I think that,
really, like, these are the decisions, these are the struggles, quote unquote. And again, I would still choose these struggles any day over working for somebody else. But I think it's just, I'm so happy to be here. And the reason I said yes to you is because I'm just so about having real conversations, and that's what you always bring. And so, and I love that example too, because it's not black and white. It's not obvious, the financial choice would have been to keep the client, but that's not the right decision. And that's actually not the right decision.
He was a good client. I mean, it was, when I kind of, I told Kofi, I was like, so, this is what I'm doing. But I think that, it would have been a disservice to continue to work with them. And I think that as business owners, people don't look at that. They look at, ooh, what's the client I'm getting? Ooh, what's the, they don't look at the, ooh, what's the client I'm losing? Oh, shit, I just lost a big client. But the funny thing with that, because the universe, as you know, works in very strange ways, I got 2 clients that, doubled what he did. So it was just one of those. And of course, it was around the time of I think it was the last full moon, where it's like you let go of things that no longer serve you. It was crazy. It was just like, okay, I'm listening.
I see that happen I don't know about you, but I see that happen all the time.
It's happening now with one of my contractors. And we'll talk about that offline. But
it really happens all the time. And I think there's a practical sort of reason for that, right? Like, you had there was a spot filled on your client roster, right? Like there's that sort of element to it. And I think, I don't know. I think from a business perspective, like there was a spot filled, but energetically there was a spot filled. And so when something is released, it just opens up space for the thing to play
the right thing
there.
to come in.
But I also think too, like you honored your craft, you honored the service that you provide so deeply and so beautifully that you were willing to say, and I do think sometimes we just have to say no to a client or to more money or to something that seems in the short term or on the surface like we shouldn't say no to, but is also the right decision. This is such a beautiful example of that. But like, I think you honored that by saying, I honor this so much that I'm going to say no to what is not a fit. And that just meant that you were saying yes energetically and otherwise to what was a fit. And so, I see that happen all the time. And it's such a funny, mystical experience, but it also just makes perfect sense. Like subconsciously even, right? Like subconsciously you were saying, this doesn't fit. I want clients that fit. Boom.
I put it out to the universe. Right? Like Fabienne is like, you are a crazy manifester. She's like, I've never seen anything like it. You put something in the universe, it's like, you need to be careful what you say because what you say happens. And it's happening now. Like with one of my contractors, I was like, this is toxic. I'm just not happy with it anymore. And, we're about to part ways. So it's just like so weird. And I'm not angry. I'm disappointed because I thought it was different.
Yeah.
I'll try to be generic because I don't want to, put anything out there. But I thought it was going to be different, and it's just not good. If you don't make me a priority, then you're not making my clients a priority. And if you're not making my clients a priority, bye. I mean, that's just because my clients are number one, period, end of sentence. Yeah. There's the two most important things in my life, three most important things in my life, in this order: my wife, my dogs, my clients. Yeah. I mean, that's my friends, but that's, you know what I mean? So it's like, and if you're not going to honor what you say you're going to do, I don't want you, in my purvey. So, but anyway, so what's your differentiator? Like, there's so many, coaches out there, right? So what makes Laura different?
I feel like I answer that differently all the time, but I think today I'm going to say, I think what makes me different is I really do understand the blend of getting to know the person and how they tick and their work really, really deeply. Like I joke that I stalk my clients because I will be like, yeah, remember you said this on social media? And they're like, I said that? Like I really get to know them. Right. Like, yeah, it was something about this and it had a green background. Like I am on their websites. I am on their stuff, not because, and I'm actually like, I'm not a micromanager. I'm actually like a very hands-off coach in that way. But I think because it's so important to know who I'm coaching and to know them at such a deep level, because the right decision for one client, like I will make the same exact recommendation in reverse for different clients. Right. Because of who they are, even if they have the exact same business model, it's not about business, and it is about business, but it's about putting the two together. And so I'm really good at business. I'm really good at people, but what I'm really good at is the mixture of those two and understanding how to customize from an action step to your mindset stuff to like, you can't create any more offers this week. Like we're not doing anything new, right? As much as I love a big change, helping my clients know when not to change, and really sort of encouraging them in the direction that they want to grow or that their business is asking them to come to the next level with. And so I think it's that blend of the two that's kind of where, is where I think I am different, because I think there's a lot of people who are good mindset coaches and a lot of people who are good business coaches, but my specialty is sort of right in that mixture. And that's also why I only work with people who love what they do and who have that mission and that deep sense of commitment to their vision, even if they don't know how to get there or they keep changing where they're going or whatever, that's fine. But there's something in them with that fire is lit within them. That lights mine, and then we're off and running. And then they can just keep coming back to, okay, what's the vision? Okay, what lights me up? Okay, how can I serve my clients? Then how can I serve the business? And when we look at it from that perspective, we can just really do what we really want, what's really underneath, what we're driving towards.
So where can people find you?
I really love to play on LinkedIn. I'm probably just as active on Instagram, and I'm seeing the stuff across the saying if you're watching the videos, and it's Laura Livingston Coaching, really everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Cool. Well, thank you. Like, we're over an hour. I mean, we're a little over an hour, not too bad, but because we had we were futzing around before, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your Honduras day with you could be laying on a hammock instead of talking to me. So I'm very flattered that, you agreed to be here. The last question that I ask all my clients is, what lights your fire?
Yeah. In work, it's working with people who are also lit up. I feel that there's just this really neat sort of like back and forth that happens when you're both really lit up about what you do. And so that was the first intention that I set for my business when I started it. And that's why the people I work with are also the people that are super lit up. So that really, to me, that's my fulfillment, is like, that's how I get that feedback loop. And how I get lit up. And then when I'm not working, I prefer to be underwater. I really, really, really love to scuba dive. That's why I live on this island. And that's what lights me up on the side.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Hang on. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
So everybody, thank you so much again for hanging out, an hour plus. To my friend Michelle, I think I might have, switched out the F-bomb for gosh. I don't even know what to do about that. But for everybody else, I appreciate you listening, and you guys are downloading. We're at like close to 3,500 downloads. If you've gleaned anything from this, like I say, all the time, like, share, subscribe. When you subscribe, you get a notification of a new episode. And I just, I love what I do. I love the comments and the emails. Keep those coming. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And until the next time, go out and find what lights your fire. See ya.